So we hear things like, he's crazy. Nah, she's just lazy and don't really want to work. Nothing's wrong with my child. Me, I'm really okay. No, I'm not going to any madhouse. And the list goes on. These are only a few of the endless responses associated with the stigmas of mental health disorder. Welcome to Uncovering My Voice, the Christian Woman Talk Show, where we listen to your story. Mental health disorder is a global phenomenon that can impact how people feel, how people act, and how people interact. Let us narrow this a bit. Mental health disorder affects an estimated 350 million people worldwide. It can cause a variety of physical and emotional symptoms such as fatigue, sadness, difficulty concentrating, low self-esteem, etc. And most importantly, changes in appetite and weight. So let me come a little closer home. Back in 2017 in Canada, it was estimated that 1 in 3 Canadians will experience some form of mental health disorder in their lifetime. Most recently, the effects of the coronavirus shows that Canada ranked 3rd in the world for anxiety, stress, and sadness felt during the coronavirus pandemic. So where does a Christian woman stand navigating the mental health disorder? Today, I have 3 beautiful women. We are going to have a conversation about the myths, the truths, and the experiences that we face with mental health disorder. But before I introduce them, I would like to invite you, please subscribe to my channel. Like this conversation. Let us hear your story. Put it in the comments and share with a friend. Ladies, welcome to Uncovering My Voice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so happy that you decided to join me today to talk about mental health. It's such a very important topic and we don't talk enough about it. So I'm going to introduce you and then I'm going to give you a minute to just tell us about yourselves. So I have with me Marilyn Strachan, Beverly Brown Chung, and Angelique DeSouza. So just go ahead and just tell us something about who you are.
Okay, I am Marilyn Thelwell Strachan. I was born in Jamaica, grew up in Jamaica all my life, came to Canada maybe about 20 years ago now. I am married. I have 3 adult children. The last one just turned 18, so yay, 3 adult children. I am currently, an entrepreneur, teacher all my life, and I currently run a tutoring business. I do enjoy these kinds of things, and I'm glad you afforded me the opportunity to come
I'm
here
glad
today.
you're here.
Hi, my name is Beverly. I am married with 1 son who's turning 21 in 3 weeks. I was born in England, grew up in Jamaica, so that's really my cultural kind of upbringing. I work as a mental health nurse, and I'm thankful to Koren for inviting me to be a part of this panel.
Love it.
Hi, I'm Angelique. I am first generation Canadian, so parents are from the West Indies. I work in the human resources space and I'm a wife and a mom to 3 amazing girls.
Oh, love it. Thank you, ladies. Oh my gosh. I just anticipate that this is going to be an awesome conversation. I'm just going to jump right in and I'm going to say, what is your understanding of some of the ways that the mental health disorder manifests itself? What is mental health? Disorder.
So, mental health has to do with how our mind works. So when we look at mental health, we're looking at how we cope in situations, whether stressful or not stressful. When we look at the disorder piece, it's when we're unable to cope with what we're facing. So we know that every individual goes through some type of stress in their life. And in terms of how we respond to stress will also determine what our mental health will be.
Okay. Okay, let's move on. What are some of the ways that it looks like? What does it look like? How do we point that out and say, hey, that's not normal? What are some of the things that we can talk about?
For example, I know you can maybe see someone that you're used to, and then all of a sudden there may be drastic weight loss, or there may be drastic weight gain. This person isn't pregnant or anything, or you may notice that the person is not as chirpy as they used to be, or they're saying things like, oh, it's just hard to get up out of bed. So these are some indications that, hold on there, someone that you know.
Yes.
If it's someone you don't know, I can't tell, but someone that you have a relationship with, and then you're seeing, like all of a sudden,
For sure.
you see some of these things happening.
Yeah.
Then you know that you start to wonder, is everything right?
Yeah.
I think that mental health operates on a pendulum. So I don't think anyone is any one way all of the time. And so we all operate within maybe a certain norm back and forth in terms of having positive mental health and not so positive. But when that pendulum swings too far one way or the other, so someone who's displaying behaviors that's opposite to the norm, even if it means that someone who's introverted is now randomly extroverted, something may be off or different, or vice versa. So I think it's just recognizing when things are extremely radically different for the person or even the individual, noticing those things about yourself.
I like the fact that you talk about noticing it in yourself, because I think one of the biggest I don't want to say problem, but situations that we face is that we might recognize that there's something, as you said, maybe the pendulum swung a little far out, but we fear admitting, or even if somebody points it out to us, we don't want to admit it. But, sometimes these mental health disorders, they come up out of experiences we've had in our life at some point in our lives, but we probably don't even remember. But from your experience, what are some of the triggers? What are some things that cause people to probably, go into a depression or go into, mental health situations?
So I'd like to respond to that. I think there's a gamut of different things that can actually precipitate mental illness. I mean, I'm gonna touch on a couple things. So one of them is trauma. In particular, when individuals experience trauma at a young age, they may or may not show any type of mental illness when they're young, but as they get older and when they are facing other stresses in life, that can actually bring them back to the place. So in other words, the memory comes back that the trauma happened, and then it can impact their way of life. So again, Marilyn touched on relationships. So I'm just going to be candid. If somebody was sexually abused at a young age, they become an adult, they get married, that could impact the sexual relationship with their partner.
Okay,
Right?
so you use the word trauma. I just want to know, when you break it down, is there another word we can use for trauma? Because sometimes we think of trauma, and I know you talked about sexual abuse, but sometimes we think of trauma, to the layman, trauma means, a blow, something that hits you or whatever. Is there another way we could understand the word trauma?
I guess the only other way I could put it is, if we've had something that happened in our lives that was very distressing, that impacts how we perceive it at the time. Because when we look at sexual abuse, a child won't know any different when they're young and they're being sexually abused. When they get older now, they start to learn positive ways of coping, and then they realize that, wait a second, what happened to me when I was young? I had no control over it. But now that I'm an adult, I'm recognizing that was not healthy.
Right.
When you start to learn the positive ways of a sexual
Yes.
relationship as opposed to being sexually abused when you're young.
Okay. Are there any other triggers that we can...
Thinking of trauma, could then we say that like a death could be traumatic? a marital relationship going sour, going on the rocks, an accident that made you unable to work, disabled. Yeah. So just these are some of the traumas that we can experience that really impact our lives.
That's right.
I also think that life in itself, just everyday living, is traumatic. So whether it's you...
Maybe that's why I'm always...
No, but that's the reality of it. It's kind of like you live life and you get into a car accident. Or you spilled coffee all over yourself on the way to work. Or the kids are driving you crazy. Or you look different than other siblings in your family. Maybe someone is darker or lighter or skinnier or heavier or taller or shorter, and you have all these comparisons. I think just life itself, to your point, going through anything to you that you interpret as stressful and not being able to properly manage that stress and cope with it are the traumas that we then carry with us that will kind of ignite these mental health issues or periods of mental health issues that we have in life.
I like it. And you're all mothers, and we all have mothers. But how can we as parents trigger mental health in our kids, in our family, in our spouses, in our parents? How can we trigger mental health disorder in our kids, whether knowingly or unknowingly?
So I'll just say something and I'll be a little vulnerable. I think we have to be really careful with our words because, the sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That's not true. And so we have to be really careful. I'll share something from my personal life. I've always been told or commented on, you have a big forehead. That's what I always heard, right?
Oh my
gosh.
So I didn't know you went through that.
So I just accepted it. Yeah, I just accepted it. And it wasn't traumatic to me, but this is how it impacts my parenting. I then tell my daughter, oh, you have a big forehead because I have a big forehead. This is a lie, or I don't know if people think I have a big forehead. I am content with my forehead. But these can be the things that shape the way you view yourself and shape the way that you view others. And so as parents, we have to be careful in terms of our words, what we say to our children, because they will take it, they'll receive it. And like you said, as children, they're growing. They don't know how to properly decipher or decode what you're saying. They take it as fact. And then they go and they pass it on to others. And they go around believing this thing that may or may not be true, which can be traumatic for them.
Yeah. So, and this is, from my personal experience, I grew up in Jamaica, and we're going to we talk about this in another show where we talk about our hair, and we talk about, how we groom our hair. And that was a bit like a trigger for me. I grew up, and a lot of Black kids grow up being told about their hair quality and how it looks and how it makes them look. And this, for a lot of people, morphs into some kind of, stigma, which then affects the way how they, whether they appreciate their hair or not.
I was going to say also, just to add to what Angelique mentioned about how do we cause mental health disorder in our kids. One of the things that is actually quite common is exactly what Angelique says, is that when we say to our children, oh, you're not coming out to anything, or you're stupid, or you're never going to make it. There's something called a self-fulfilling prophecy, that if we say that continually to our children as they're growing up, when they get older, they really struggle to find out. So is mom right? Did what dad says that okay? And then I start to live it out and think, okay, I'm not going to go to school. I don't feel like I'm bright enough or smart enough to get that career. And so it dampens their sort of goal in life. And then they don't reach for their potential. And that can really stifle their career aspirations. And so we have to be careful. I think words matter for sure.
Yeah, and really what's wrong with you?
Yes.
And we just say, well, come on, what's wrong with you? And we have to be intentional about our words. And that's how we're going to break the cycle so that they don't do it to their kids. And we have to be intentional. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that one just hit me hard because, I say that sometimes. So now I know it's not cool. So ladies, there's a school of thought that as Christian women, which we all are, as Christian women, we have nothing to worry about as it relates to a mental health disorder because we have We have Christian friends, we have pastors, we have God, we have prayer. These are our go-to things. So we don't need to worry, and we don't need to talk about about mental health because we're Christians. Is that a truth or a myth?
Wow.
That's definitely a myth. Because I feel like mental health doesn't discriminate, you know.
I love
Just
it.
because I am a Christian believing woman, it doesn't mean that I can't be, I don't want to use the word victim, but it doesn't mean that I can't have mental health issue. Just like how, you know, we live in a sinful world. Let's face it. We're all prone to stressors in life. And the important thing is, how do we respond to those stressors? So as a Christian woman, it doesn't mean that I could never be mental ill. Because if I'm telling myself that, that's a myth in itself.
Yeah.
We're not, you know, it doesn't discriminate. Mental illness doesn't discriminate at all.
Yeah. When I look at it, I mean, I would look at my own self and my own journey. And after having, it was Jade, my third child, that I didn't even realize. I went into the hospital and I said, okay, I'm going to put the braids in my hair. You know, we do these little things preparing for delivery. I put the braids in and I came home with her and she was just crying nonstop. And I couldn't deal with the braids. All of a sudden became very heavy on my head. It became very itchy. And I was like, okay, if I don't do something to this child, well, I'm doing something to these braids. And I just took the scissors and I cut the braids literally from out of my head. Now, at that point in time, I'm like, yeah, that provided relief. Only when my kids came home that I realized that, wow, I literally had patches in my head. I didn't even know what I was doing. But at that point, I'm like, thanking God I used the scissors on my hair, right? Because you are in this, right? And at that moment, afterwards now you're realizing, oh, this is part of the postpartum depression that some women go through after giving birth to a child. Yeah. And so I'm a Christian woman. I pray to God. But here it was just so overwhelming with a crying baby nonstop, no help at all. And you face these things. I've had other issues in life as well. And just recently, just about maybe 4 years ago, my husband and I, we were in a marital crisis. And it manifested itself in so many different ways. First of all, I just stopped eating. Right? And I went down to probably 90 pounds. I was a bone. Right? And so I'm like, wow. And just the thing. So I even went on antidepressants because I had to find a way to cope with this, you know, and I'm like, many times as a Christian, you think, oh, no, you're not supposed to do these things because you're supposed to pray. And when you pray, you know, God will answer you. And so, you know, why are you going to the world to take on something of the world? Drugs are just going to do this and do that. So I had all these things about what should I really do in this time of crisis. And it made me wonder, am I less of a Christian? And then people even told me, it's because you know, like Peter, he walked on the water. But when he took his eyes off God, that's when he began to sink. And I was told that I'm sinking because I've taken my eyes off Christ. Yes.
Been there.
Right. And so my crying, whatever, it was like, hold on. But, you know, so meaning good many times as Christians, but not understanding the depth of it. So we say these things to others and it hurts. It really, really hurts.
That's true.
And I think it's so important that when we look at responding to someone who is going through a mental health crisis or a mental health disorder, is that we need to be practical. So we know that God gives men wisdom, you know, just like how we have a family doctor that we go through for physical problems. Why isn't it okay for me to go to a psychiatrist if I'm having a mental health issue, right?
Absolutely.
So prayer works, it does, but God wants us to be practical Christians, and so we need to use the resources that are there to help us get better if we're in a mental health crisis, right?
Yeah. And you know what? I'm happy Mary touched on the fact that she got that kind of stigma from members of the church. Is very true to life in many ways. And so we find, or maybe I should ask, do you find that because of some stigmas that the women or men in our churches don't accept the fact that they need help. Do you find?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just like, the other topics that remain taboo in our church or communities, mental health is one of those things that people want to shy away from. People don't even forget getting medication. They don't want to admit that they're having a mental health crisis. And I think your story was so interesting. You cutting your braids, it's so symbolic because you snapped, right? And you were all alone. And thankfully, that's how you were able to cope with it versus another means.
Yes.
But even with that, people don't discuss the real realities of what it's like going through those things. And so, I think until our communities, our churches, our culture really recognizes and values the fact that mental health is just health _health. Like you said, we have to take care of ourselves and go to the doctor. We have to take care of our mental health in the same manner and encourage that in our churches.
Yes.
Sorry to
Go
cut you.
ahead.
But I think because we don't see the physical manifestation of
That's
mental
right.
health.
It's not a broken arm.
Yeah.
Right, it's not a broken
It's
arm.
not a broken arm. Yeah, you can see that.
Yeah.
But apart from, a little weight gain or swinging from one side of the pendulum to
Yeah.
the next, you don't really see it in a physical manifestation. And so you're like, or it will be like, get over it, right? Or don't you believe in God?
And if I can just touch on something quickly, because I think this is really important to kind of mention, is that when we look at the history of mental illness, if you look back, I'm going to call it the dark ages, because they were dark ages, where people who were mentally ill, because their behavior was so out of the norm and maybe aggressive and they're agitated and restless, they used to tie them down. And so I think education is huge. People need to be educated in this day and age, about what mental health really is and mental disorder and how it's manifesting itself and what the treatments are. Like, we've come away from those dark ages now. We're living, this is the, 23rd century, 22nd century, whatever we are in. And so I think
21st century.
it's education, exactly what you're saying. It's educating people and saying, this is real. People used to say people are demon possessed, right?
Yes.
And they used to treat them accordingly. We've come away from that now.
Yeah, we've come away from
Come
that,
away
but
from that.
we also need to accept that prayer is one arm
Yes.
of our
Absolutely.
healing,
It is,
but
it
it's
is.
not the total healing. Some people.
And you know what? No, prayer can be used in, Lord, what direction I'm supposed to take.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Right? The
Yes.
direction I'm supposed to take.
Yes.
And so we go to God. We're not leaving God out of this picture at
That's
all.
right.
But we're saying to him, what do you want me to do, God?
It's like
What
if I'm,
direction do you want me
if
to
I'm diabetic and the doctor says, babe, you need insulin. What am I going to tell him? I'm going to pray and I'm not
about
going
it?
to take
Or
my
if
insulin.
you have cancer, you're gonna
it's the same kind
pray.
of thing.
So
My
we need to
psychiatrist
just
saying,
equate it.
yeah, I need an
Yeah.
antidepressant to help me because you know what? Those neurotransmitters in my brain or my chemicals in my brain are not working the way they're supposed to. And this medication is going to help to balance it.
I had to
you know what I-
understand that.
Of
Yes.
course. And
No,
I
I
had
know.
to
Yeah.
understand
to,
that.
to your point, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. I had to really get what she was saying because I refused antidepressants. And I really had to understand the science behind
Yeah.
it. But I'll speak probably a little bit later to my journey with antidepressants.
All right, so ladies, our viewers, of course, they're going to want to hear our story because we are not mental health professionals. We are regular women, and we want to give our viewers something that they can resonate with. What's your journey? What's your story? Have you experienced? I know Marilyn spoke to her experience earlier, but if she has more, she can feel free. What's our story?
So my story is when I was probably my late 20s, I got married at 24 and my husband and I were trying for a baby. And so for me, my journey is that we lost 2 pregnancies. And after the second pregnancy was lost or miscarriage, I didn't go into a depression per se, but I didn't go into a depression per se, but I had a really difficult time kind of trying to figure out why it happened to me. I'm a Christian, I've been serving God since I was 10.
I know.
And I said, Lord, I don't understand. I don't understand why I've lost 2 babies. Like, what is that about? And so for me, during that time, it was very hard. I would cry, I'd be crying. And then for me, being a mental health person that like Marilyn was saying, I kept saying, no, Bev, you're not depressed. You're not going to go on medication. You're fine. You'll be okay. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. I didn't go on antidepressants, but it took a while. It took at least, I would say, maybe 3-4 months for me to get over what had happened, because it happened twice in the space of like 4 years. And so for me, that was a very difficult journey. And my relationship with Christ, it was a little bit rocky, because I was questioning him. Why is this happening? But I can sit here and tell you today that my church family was very supportive. They visited. I had a very close friend who kind of went through similar issues, and we were able to support one another. So being able to be open and honest with others actually helped me recover.
Yeah.
And getting back to work, I had to get back to work. I did not wait that 8 weeks. I went back to work, got stuck in, and that was a distraction. And over the years, I just, was able to accept what had happened. And now I have my boy. I'm so happy. That's been like the icing on the cake. Now I have a child who is almost 21. And so God has been good.
Amen.
Yes. Do we have a story?
Sure. So I'll say, as a young woman, post 35, over that 35 mark.
I like it.
We won't give any more details. I had a pretty good life and upbringing. Obviously had some challenges along the way, but nothing significant. Over the last 2 years, though, I've experienced motherhood twice over, so a total of 3 children now. A death in the family. My grandmother passed. I sold a home, I purchased a home, and I did a renovation that was really, really overwhelming. And COVID. So my 2 years were packed with lots of stressors. And, I think something that we also have to do is educate ourselves in terms of what depression looks like. But I certainly was not operating in my norm. And for a long time, I developed a routine that was abnormal for me, but it kind of became my everyday. I wasn't dressing a certain way, or I was always in sweats and home clothes and stuff like that. I wasn't going out because of the pandemic and because I had these young children. Finances were being
question.
Yeah, finances were funny because of all of the different changes that were happening. And it took a toll. And I'm telling you, it was recognizing that something feels off and being prayerful about God to show me what it was in my life that was draining me, being intentional about trying to set boundaries, trying because I'm still learning, and also being intentional about seeking out the help that was already waiting for me that I didn't realize was there. My friends, my family, even people in my community, resources online, seeking those out. And I mean, I don't know if there's a word as healed. I'm not healed, but I'm still every day getting closer and closer to a more normal lifestyle where I think God wants me to be. And so that's my journey, not necessarily a story, because it's still happening every day.
Yes.
So, that's
and just talking about it, brings a little bit of therapy and a little bit of,
It does.
it does,
Yeah.
And I think to normalize what we're going through, because I really believe that, there's other women out there suffering, but they're too scared to approach anybody to say, this is what I'm going through. And you'll be surprised how many people are going through stuff they're just not saying. And it just takes one of us to speak up.
Yes.
That's going to give someone else a courage to say, Bev, I'm going through the same thing.
my
Yeah.
word.
Then you can support each other, right?
That's the intention, right?
Yes.
For people to be able to look on and resonate and understand that, hey, this is not just about you. Other people are going through something similar, and this is what they're doing to help them to get up and get the help they need. And so finally, I want to ask you, what is your word to someone who's out there looking on, someone who's watching us today? What can you tell them to help them to get up out of their low state and reach for the help that's available? What do you have to say to them? Especially those Christian women who think that it's not a thing.
Well, you know what? I don't know. You went on to a question, but I don't mind backtracking to my
go
journey.
Ahead. You wanted to talk about your journey?
Just a little bit, yeah.
Go ahead. We can fix this. Go ahead.
All right. So, I was in a marital crisis since about 2017, maybe about that. It's been a while. And maybe 2018. And so I could see the decline. I could see things happening in my marriage. At the same time, when things were happening in my marriage, my first daughter had just got married and she was pregnant. When she had the baby, we saw things happening with the baby, the first baby. And it was like, what's happening? And so we had a kitchen disaster, a nightmare with renovation.
I remember that.
It was a nightmare. So and it was just a struggle. And then my husband says what we don't want to hear. He wants to leave the marriage, right? And so everything just came down in 2019. And then the pandemic was 2020. And seeing him going and not being in, and I was alone in all that I had to do. I had my church family that supported me. I had my friends who came by and prayed with me. I had so much help, right? But I will tell you that it took its toll on me. I attempted suicide, I think it was 3 times.
Oh my God.
The reason I plunged to that level was I would not recommend this to anyone, but I hated taking the antidepressants. I had to be on like about 3 different ones. I had a whole week where I would not sleep, so I would become. It's horrible. Not sleeping, my brain wasn't working anymore. I'm crying. I can't eat. I didn't even know I wasn't eating. Friends brought me Ensure, gave me a teaspoon of it. Not even that could stay down. So it was really, really bad. And even what happened now that plunged me into my suicide attempts was that I decided I didn't want to take these tablets anymore. And I quit cold turkey. And I'm like, God, I know this is what you want me to do. I mustn't take this anymore. And I quit the first time and went and just took all the tablets one time. After I'm like, the first day's fine, the second day I'm good. I'm feeling I can manage this, right? And I did that, and I ended up in the hospital. Another time again, I said, I can do this now. I'm a year stronger. I'm here. I can get off these meds. I don't want to be taking them. And I plunged again. No, it was just two full attempts. No, 2 attempts. No, not a third. The third time now, I decided I was going to come off these meds. But I said, I'm not, it didn't happen that I wanted to stop. I actually ran out. And there was no prescription at the pharmacy. So this time, it wasn't me. I didn't want to stop yet. And when I went to the pharmacy and I couldn't get any, I tried to get through to my psychiatrist, and it was a holiday weekend and he was away and I couldn't get to anyone. I called my nurse practitioner. I went through everything, and then afterwards now I started withdrawal. So when you go into withdrawal, your body, you shake, you sweat profusely, you are agitated. I'm just rocking. It's a whole 2-3 days of intense heart racing, everything. And they're like, go, my children are like, Mom, go to the doctor. I'm like, no, I can manage this. No, Mom. And so they're watching me. I'm on a 24-hour watch. And I'm like saying, I'm going to pass through this. The doctor came back, said, go and pick up your meds. And I'm like, no, I've already gone through 2 days of this withdrawal. I'm going to go through the rest. Anyway, I did go through the rest, but it was not good. Sudden withdrawal is really setting yourself up for a whole lot of failure. But however, I did it. And I am now medication free.
Amen.
Right? But I had to do a whole lot of like brain treatments and therapy.
And your husband is back.
And my husband is back.
We are excited.
A lot
That's
of
good.
prayer.
Amen.
And support.
Yes.
And this is what you need. And we can rise. We can rise again,
Yes.
So we can go to the very lowest of lows, but we can rise again. And that's the amazing thing about it.
Yeah, you're all giving me hope. Lots of hope. And I'm sure we're giving our viewers lots of hope. So what's our final word to our viewers? How can we encourage them to rise above whatever they're going through?
I think the first thing is to acknowledge that you need the help.
Yeah.
And also to acknowledge that no man is an island, and a problem shared is a problem halved. And that, the resources are there to help you.
Yes.
And I think what I would say to somebody who may be afraid of reaching out for help, try and find a trusted friend, somebody you can trust. It could be a friend, it could be a family member, it could be a pastor, somebody you can maybe share one-to-one that's, it's going to be confidential. Maybe you can start there. And then from there, kind of figure out, my next step could be I go see my family doctor. I'm having these issues. What can you do for me? And then from there, the family doctor, if he thinks it's needed, he refer you to a psychiatrist or a psychologist or to whatever community resources that's helpful for you. But I think that the key thing is to accept that you have an issue or a problem and willing to get the help.
Yeah.
And be willing to listen, because maybe you didn't somebody pointed it out. So be willing to listen.
Yeah.
Do we have any final words?
I think the resources is key, like you said, but also being prayerful about it. You may not know what you're praying for, but you know that you need the help. And our God is so good. You don't have to have the words.
That's right.
You don't have to have the exact specific thing that you need help with. God can read your heart. And so just knowing and reaching out. And I think in addition to what you said about pastors and friends, there's also a lot more at arm's length support as well. There are employee assistance programs at work, which are anonymous. You don't have to feel any of the stigma.
That's right.
You can call them up and just say, I need to talk to someone right now.
Yes.
And in most cases, they're covered, or a certain amount of sessions are covered. Google, what do I do when I feel blank? And just educate yourself. So, if there's taboo or stigma, those are the ways that you can slowly bring yourself to a point where you're comfortable sharing your personal situation with others.
And just one more resource that I think is really important before Marilyn comes in is if you're, say, by yourself, you feel suicidal or you feel like you can't cope, there's a 310 crisis cope line that people can call. There's one in the York region and one in Durham region as well. In Canada. Yeah. Sorry, Canada. Yes.
In Canada, but there's numbers in your country wherever you're watching from.
Exactly.
And there's always hope.
There's always
hope. Don't ever feel ashamed of your crisis situation, how you handled it. Though we're all made up in different ways. I'm learning how to cope with stress. I never knew that kind of stress would come to me, but I learned how to learn and grow and made lots of mistakes. But we can thrive and we can rise above it.
I love it. And also, if you feel like you've spoken to someone who you trust and they betray you, just move on. Find somebody else, because maybe that person did not live up to the expectation. But don't let that keep you back from getting the help that's there.
Yes.
Find somebody, even if they don't know the resources, they might be able to point you to someone. Find a pastor, find a community center, someone. Just please acknowledge, accept, and get help. That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Do we have any final words that we want to say?
Well, we hope that, this little talk that we've done today is going to reach someone who may be struggling right now with a mental health issue, that they've ran a pushing the back and thinking it's not happening, that hopefully they're recognizing that, it's not abnormal to have a mental disorder. It's normal because we're human beings and we all have emotions.
That's right.
And that we should always go for help.
I love it. I love it. And what a better way to end. Ladies, it was a blast. I had fun. I am going to invite all our viewers, if you have a story, put it in the comment. Let us hear your story. We will give you feedback. Thank you, ladies, for joining us today. Really appreciate all the stories and all the energy that was put into doing this. But we're going to end now. And so for us at Uncovering My Voice, it's bye-bye.